Hi, everyone. We're going to get started in a few minutes. We're going to give people a few minutes to join. So if you still need to run to the restroom or get some coffee, you've got a few minutes. So take your time and we'll get started shortly. Hi, Kendra.
Hi, Abby.
People are still piling in, so we'll give them a few minutes and then I think we can get started. So
Sounds great.
yeah.
We'll get started just about on time here.
Yes. How's your Wednesday going, Kendra?
It's good. I'm a little earlier in the morning, but it's beautiful over here. Can't complain, and we're doing this fun webinar. So what's not to like about this Wednesday morning?
Truly. Okay, so you're on the West Coast. You're in
Washington State.
Washington State, and I'm in the other Washington. So it's a great way to spend my lunch hour. I'm so excited to chat about billing.
It's one of my favorite topics. A little
Same.
biased because I was front and back office for a while. So
An expert. Oh, wait, they can't hear us. Oh, no. Oh, gosh. Why? Oh, my goodness.
um,
Can you raise your hand if you can hear us? Okay. So it seems like people can hear us.
we can hear. There's maybe a few. So I would say just make sure, um, let's see, I'm a little foreign to Zoom, so my apologies. But just make sure your computer volume is on up all the way, and then make sure your correct speakers are connected because sometimes it'll make you choose. Like if you have AirPods, you've got to disconnect. And
Yes,
then
that
we'll
happened.
answer, I'll type back answers to some of these here.
Okay, perfect. This is why we join early to work out our technical kinks. So thank you for being on time. Okay, give it a few more minutes, making sure we get these technical things worked out. We budgeted time for this, so don't worry. We'll still be within the hour.
It wouldn't be a normal webinar if we didn't have any technical issues, right?
Yeah, truly. At least our Wi-Fi is working.
That is true. Let's knock on wood. We don't want to jinx that though. Um, well, the good news is we are recording. So if for some reason you're still having technical issues with volume, for those of you, it looks like maybe just a small handful, you're definitely welcome to watch it back.
Yes, but hopefully we can get this sorted so everyone is good to go. Is anyone else still having audio issues? You can raise your hand if you are having issues. One. What is going on? Okay. All right. Seems like people are getting there. So, okay. All right. Should we get started? I feel like we're in a pretty good shape. How does that sound, Kendra? Are you good to go?
Yeah, I think I'm good to go. Wendy sent in a question about not everyone is here. Can we start in 10 minutes or so?
Oh,
think we'll want to start here at 5 after, just so we can stay on time and courteous of everybody else's obligations. And again, for any part that's missed, if you have from team members joining just a little bit late, we'll still admit them throughout so they aren't going to be, like kicked out or anything or not able to join, but they can watch back.
yeah. And we'll be talking slow too. And I feel like the first couple slides are just an introduction to us and to Wisdom. So we'll make sure, I feel like by the time we get started on the actual content, things should be in good shape. So I feel like we should just go ahead and get started. So welcome everyone. As you've heard already from the little chatter between Kendra and I, we work at Wisdom and we're so glad you're here. My name is Abby and I work very closely with our operations teams of billing experts.
Hi, and I'm Kendra. I've been in the dental industry for just over a decade now, as an assistant, treatment coordinator, OM, and regional manager. So today's webinar, we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, as I mentioned prior, which is all about something that doesn't get enough attention when we talk about your billing, and that is your clinical notes.
Yes, exactly. So today we are going to look at how small, practical changes to how you document care can make a big difference in how quickly and how reliably you get paid. So one of the main things we're going to emphasize today is that billing does not start with a code or a claim, but in the back office with clear, complete documentation that tells the full story.
All right, so as far as our agenda, here's what we have planned for you today. We have about a 15-minute presentation. We're going to start with a few common reasons your claims get denied. And again, that's one that doesn't get talked about enough. We'll introduce you to your new favorite note-taking process. We'll walk through some real examples, and at the end, we'll end with time for your questions with a live Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat box as we go. I know a lot of you are already familiar with that, so thank you. You're also welcome to save them for the end, and then we'll be sure to answer all of your questions at the very end. We've got some freebies in store for you, so make sure to stick around and have your phones ready to scan the QR codes. And we also have a special offer just for the attendees today, so you don't want to miss it.
Perfect. So just a real quick intro to those of you who are new to Wisdom. Wisdom started in a real family practice, a family dental practice. Our co-founder, Ashley Bond, watched her dad struggle with collections for years, literally losing sleep over inconsistent collections, constant staffing challenges, and he was even embezzled from twice. So Ashley built Wisdom to solve that problem from the inside out. And in the process, we learned this was not an uncommon story.
Yeah, in fact, we learned that for most dental practice, collecting what they're owed is a major source of anxiety. On average, dental practices are leaving about 10% of potential revenue uncollected. That equates to $16 billion, and that's billion with a B, that dentists miss out on for work that's already been done and billed for. Now, I don't like to say that we've seen it all at Wisdom, but we've definitely seen our fair share of clients who are borderline bankrupt or even suffering from health implications of stressing about not getting paid. And that's not a fun spot to be. It's also a lot of money left on the table, $16 billion. I challenge each and every one of you to run your collections ratios. And if you're not sure how to, tune into our other resources or even reach out for a practice analysis. But let's chat about how we can help you today. And with that, I'll let Abby lead us off.
All right. Thank you, Kendra. All right, so we are here today to chat about one of the main reasons that claims get denied and how to get paid on time. But before we get to that, like Kendra already mentioned, we have a lot of resources on our website to do this all by yourself, but we've also worked with hundreds of practices to help clean up their notes, reduce denials, and speed up revenue. So if you've ever felt overwhelmed by documentation or like your billing team is working overtime to patch holes, you're in the right place, you're not alone, and we're here to help you as much as you'd like. So going back to Kendra, let's get into it.
Perfect. Thanks, Abby. So there was a time when narratives were the gold standard, detailed explanations typed into box 35 to justify your procedures. But as Teresa Duncan shared with us at a recent event that we hosted, that era is coming to an end. Carriers today want clinical documentation, not summaries. They're skipping narratives altogether and going straight to the attached notes. So your notes need to tell the story and not be a summary on the side. Good news is that when you write good notes, you don't need a narrative. So many times I've seen partial or incomplete chart notes or cryptic narrative notes somewhere else, like attached in the ledgers or even on the procedure codes, sometimes even in the office journal or note section, depending on what software you use. So writing excellent notes is more than just an on-time payment. It's a time saver and it eliminates redundancies in your work, room for error, and inconsistencies.
Yes, exactly. So when claims get denied, it's super easy to blame coding or insurance, but it's likely that those denials started even before that with the clinical notes, which we're seeing more and more as even more crucial than they once were. This can be problematic because many of our clinical teams aren't trained to think about what a payer will think about the notes. They're documenting what's important to the practice in order to give great care. And while that's super important, clean notes play a much bigger role than you might have previously thought.
Yeah, I like to say think of insurance as grading you on the work that you did. So back in high school or even college, when you wrote an essay, it was done on one document and turned in, right? The same concept applies here. Your story should be told on the chart note because insurance is not there to see the story in the mouth. And when you start taping things together to hand in, it gets messy and you might not always get the outcome that you hoped for. If the notes don't clearly show why the treatment was needed, what was observed, or what the diagnosis was, your claim is already standing on shaky ground. Think about this. You might do the perfect root canal, but if the notes don't mention infection, pain, or radiographic evidence, the payer has no reason to approve it. One of our offices we onboarded recently had over $20,000 in unpaid claims, and it was strictly due to lack of supporting documentation, which should have been included as standard.
That's so wild. But that unclear language like did filling or crown place often won't be enough for insurance companies when they're reviewing claims these days. We need specificity, diagnosis, and a story that connects the patient's complaint, findings, and the treatment provided. We want to make everything as straightforward as possible for insurance so that they have no reason to deny claims or delay payment. As you likely already know from your own experiences, reimbursements are already such a slow process. We want to make it as easy and straightforward as possible so that there's no reason we need to resubmit or for payments to take even longer than they already do.
Speaking of payments taking longer, this is one of my favorite slides. So before we drop the big reveal of the secret to clean claims, I want to flag these attachments. So I won't go too deep into them today for the sake of time, but they're just as important as the notes themselves when it comes to getting paid on time, especially. So I previously mentioned insurance isn't sitting chairside to see the story unfold. So make sure you're writing that picture book for them and providing those diagnostic quality images. The key word there is diagnostic quality. If your IO photos are unclear, make sure you take them again. It takes a matter of seconds, which will save you hours of headache later. Now, that might be easier said than done, but it's a team effort, and there's a lot of ways to help your clinical team understand their role in claims payment.
Yeah, exactly. And we actually have a free ebook that goes into depth on clinical notes and everything we talk about today, and including attachments. So be sure to check that out. We linked it at the end, so you'll be able to read up on all of this later. So just keep an eye out for that later. Okay, so the question we're all here today to answer is, what does the back office have to do with clean claims? And that answer is everything. Like Kendra already said, you can do the best dentistry in the world and still not get paid just because the notes didn't say why the treatment was necessary or what exactly you observed during the exam. These denials won't always say missing clinical notes. They'll show up as vague rejections or endless requests for more information. No one really has time to comb through each and every denial, so this is a problem that often flies under the radar while simultaneously draining your collections. Um, the solution, it's cliche, but the answer is teamwork. Billing is not just the biller's job, it's a team sport. Clinical, front desk, and billing staff all need to be on the same page about what good documentation looks like. So if you're here from the front office, take this back to your clinical team. And if you're clinical, loop in your billing team. This only works when everyone talks to each other and is on the same page.
Yep, teamwork makes the dream work. So I was actually chatting with one of our billers, and she shared a really great quote that's so fitting for dentistry. She said, "Everything you do affects everything you do." I'll say that one more time just so it sinks in. Everything you do affects everything you do. Clinical notes start even before the appointment itself. The front desk can start recording patient info before they even come in. When a patient calls and requests an appointment to treat bleeding gums, for example, the admin team can also ask questions that'll start to paint a picture on those clinical notes.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone on the team can and should be contributing to those notes throughout the whole process. So assistants can capture any observations, hygienists can handle any patient complaints, referrals, or findings. Doctors can own the assessment and treatment plans, and it can be a huge time saver for other team members, for doctors when they actually write out their observations or dictating to an assistant to ensure that everything is captured accurately at the time of the appointment. Billing and admin should also review for completeness and help with attachments or prior authorizations. So again, you as an individual aren't in charge of everything. You don't have to write everything, the entire notes, but everyone in the office does need to speak the same language. So all this talk about clinical notes, and you might be wondering why they're so important to clean claims that will get approved the first time. So clinical notes are your legal protection. They're your defense in malpractice suits, audits, and peer review. Narratives won't protect you in court, but clinical notes are the legal record. So many carriers now base approval decisions solely based on the attached clinical notes. They also allow for team efficiency and delegation. So with the templated systems, dental assistants can help populate the framework, which helps streamline operations and reduces workload on the provider. Proper clinical notes are documentation standards. They not only ensure clarity, consistency, but also protection. A good note should be easy to replicate and should not be intimidating. Again, in our ebook, we have printable, editable templates that you can use the same time in the future. So by the end of this presentation, you'll have no excuse not to submit clear notes. Okay, let's move on.
Perfect. All right, let's talk about soap. Let's see if you guys can raise your hand if you've ever used it before. And I'm not talking like Dial or Dove. I'm talking Soap Notes, the acronym. Or you can drop a chat too if you would like in the Q&A. We'll take a poll here. Does anybody out there currently use Soap Notes?
There's a few, but not a ton. So I feel like this next section will be really good.
All right, well, let's get into SOAP then. All right, so SOAP stands for Subjective, Objective, Assessment, and Plan. It's a simple framework that helps you write stronger, clearer notes, and more importantly, it's going to help your whole team stay aligned. When your notes follow this format, they're easier to write, easier to read, and far more likely to support clean claim submission. Insurers, again, want to see the clear story of the visit. SOAP is going to help you tell that story with less stress. So think of SOAP as your shared playbook. Everyone doesn't have to write it, but everyone needs to understand it. As Abby said earlier, make sure you're all speaking the same language. So let's break down each part of SOAP a bit further and understand what it truly means.
Okay, we'll get started with the S, subjective. This represents the patient's voice. So what did the patient complain about, request, or mention during the intake? If you can, document verbatim, because that will help protect you and strengthen your claims. So for example, instead of writing patient is in pain, you'd write patient reports pain in upper right molar, worsens when biting, and that will help add specificity and paint a clearer picture of the problem.
All right, the O is going to stand for objectives. This is your clinical observation. What did you see and what did the diagnosis show? In this one, you want to avoid generalizations and be as specific as possible.
Yes. The A stands for assessment, and this is where you make the call. What's the diagnosis based on the O and the S? Always be sure to include a formal diagnosis if you can, because it helps support medical necessity and also satisfies the carrier.
All right, and last but not least, P is for plan. So what did you do today and what comes next? This includes treatment performed, materials used, how long it took, and the follow-up plan. So the plan is going to help tie together the visit. And if someone reviewed this note later, they should know exactly what happened and what the next steps are. So I like to say, set your peers up for success. Make sure those notes are clear as day.
Yeah, and I feel like that reinforces the idea of teamwork too. So we're all working together as a team. We have the same goal here, which is to get paid and do great work. Okay, so let's take a look at this note example together. Patient has sore gums, dead SRP. If you want to take a moment to think about what is wrong about this note, you can think in your head, you can write in the question section, but I feel like it's kind of obvious now that we know what SOAP is. And these notes are just super vague and incomplete, and it doesn't tell the whole story at all. So let's beef it up together and make it insurance approved. So the S, what is the patient's complaint here? Let's be specific. They're bleeding when they brush their teeth and are experiencing sensitivity in their lower front teeth. The O, the objective. What is the clinical team observing? We notice those pockets and they confirm our suspicions with radiographs. A, the assessment. What's the diagnosis here? Periodontitis stage 2, grade B. And the P is plan. What did we do and what comes next? SRP completed. It took a total of 65 minutes and we scheduled a follow-up appointment in 4 weeks. Do you see the difference here? Like these notes are so thorough that insurance doesn't stand a chance.
Much better than just sore gums. Yeah, that's so helpful. I feel like all offices could really benefit from this information today. Honestly, we see so many documentation challenges when new offices come to us, but there's one case that really stood out to me. I just can't ever forget. And that was a single provider who reached out for help with their billing. In their 90 plus aging bucket alone, they had over $1 million in claims. And that's for a single provider, one dentist, I think maybe one hygienist or so, very small practice. Regardless, they couldn't understand why their claims were getting paid. From their perspective, they were doing everything right. They created the claim, they attached the images, they added a narrative, and then they sent it off to insurance. During our onboarding, we discovered the root cause of the problem, which was that their clinical notes weren't being documented or managed properly in their PMS or practice management software. In fact, in a lot of cases, they were incomplete, not signed off by the rendering provider, or they were just missing altogether. And we're talking big cases like crown, implants, root canals, all of the above. So we mentioned previously that clinical documentation is a team effort. And in this case, the office was not working cohesively as a team. The assistant would normally seat the patient, and so most often the chart note would reflect something like, again, patient in pain or sore gums, but the specificity or the subjective wasn't there. But to be fair, neither was the O, the A, or the P, so they weren't closing the loop on those chart notes. Now, this was definitely an extreme case, but it's not uncommon for us to see incomplete, missing, or inconsistently stored chart notes, all of which creates the perfect storm and seriously delays your claim submission or the progress on working age claims. So without clear, complete documentation, you're not just risking denials, you're actively increasing the aging of your own claims.
Yeah, that is such a good example. And I cannot believe the number, that much money going. Yeah, that's wild. So the main takeaway today is if you remember one thing from this webinar is good documentation and good communication go hand in hand. So clean claims don't happen without clean notes, and clean notes don't happen without a team that's aligned. So here at Wisdom, we are here to support you as much or as little as you would like. So that means everything from providing you with billing insights and free resources like that ebook I promised earlier. So if you want, you can scan this QR code here and we'll let you download our free clinical notes ebook, which will have printable templates and tips to make the clinical notes the easiest part of your day. I'll also link both of these at the end. So if you don't get it right now, it'll come back, don't worry. And then if you're also looking for more than just written resources and you're interested in outsourcing your dental billing to our dedicated team of expert billers who will function like an extension of your in-office team, we're here to help you figure out what works best. So even if you just have questions about how outsourcing works or what kind of help you can expect with aging, verification, or appeals, I encourage you to schedule a chat with us. So we're actually doing a special for participants of this webinar. So if you scan this QR code here and schedule a time for a demo, we'll give you a $50 Visa gift card in return. I'm going to launch a poll in a second. So if any of this is resonating with you, we'd love to chat more. Let me launch it before I forget or I lose my train of thought. Here you can request some information from us. And if you have questions about your billing or to answer any of your additional questions that we won't get to today, you'll still qualify for the Visa gift card if you select any of these options, and we'll be sure to reach out to you with whatever you're looking for after the webinar concludes. So we'll give you a second to download or scan your QR codes, participate in the poll, and we'll just give it a minute and then we'll get to our Q&A. So grab some.
Some of my favorite templates there. I love them. They're very clear.
They are good templates. I feel like templates just make everything easier. So
Absolutely.
We're here to make your
Work,
life easier.
work smarter, not harder.
I feel like that's always the way I like to live my life, you know?
Especially in dentistry when we're on such time restrictions, like those 10-15 minute increments that we schedule in, we know that they never go as planned. So, when you couple that with trying to complete your notes and have good notes, it's like just make my job easier, fill in the blanks and go.
Yeah, well, I feel like the thing with templates is it's a lot of work up front, but once you have it, it makes like your life is so much easier. So we're
Yeah.
here to do the hard time-consuming work in advance so you don't have to.
You're like, why didn't I implement this years ago?
I know, 'cause it's a lot of work, but again, we got you. Okay, we'll give it another 30 seconds and then I feel like I can probably just leave it up. Oh, whatever. We can get going. Um, okay, so we're gonna take a look at the questions coming in. And in about 30 seconds, we'll get started. And Kendra, I'll let you get it kicked off with one that looks appealing to you to start off with. But like she said earlier, we're gonna do as many as we can. And if we don't get to your questions today, we'll be sure to follow up in with some thoughtful answers in blog form and or something like that and email them your way so you can get questions answered.
And it looks like I have a few duplicates here too. So I'll do my best to incorporate everybody's question, even if it's not directly answering your question in another one. That way we can try to give you as much info as possible. So give it one more second and then we'll get started here. Um,
Okay, let's get those poll answers in. And we'll give it, I think, 30 seconds starting now.
While we're waiting, looks like Wendy had a question. Are we going to be able to replay this? Yes, today's recording, or excuse me, today's webinar is recorded. So you'll definitely be able to watch that back if you needed to.
Yeah, and we'll send a follow-up email tomorrow with where you can find the ebook and the link to the webinar. So, and a link to like the $50 visa special. So don't worry if your computer's not working now, if your camera's broken, like we will give that all to you. So yes, don't worry. We will make sure you get all the resources you need. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll here. But if you didn't get a chance to participate and you are looking for something from us, you know where to reach us. Okay, so Kendra, you want to get started on some Q&A?
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So one of the questions was, do you often see that clinical team members are actually touching parts of billing themselves? This looks like it also couples with, looks like Morgan had a question about how to implement it. So the short answer is yes, we hear this all the time that dentists are doing it on the weekends, which is unfortunate. Hygienists, assistants are even getting their hands into the billing with various tasks of it, some way, somehow. But one of the biggest benefits of billing is definitely outsourcing, or at least making sure that there's a uniform person doing it. Morgan, specifically for you, you had asked about, let's see here, how do I get the back office to implement changes to clinical notes that are needed for insurance? For example, I've asked hygienists to ask their perio maintenance patients for approximate SRP dates to put in the clinical note, but they're saying it's too much work. That is a great question, and I know change is super hard. I will say it's going to be best to have a cohesive team here. So if you guys could even split the duties to try to get that information somehow, some way, whether it's a handoff when the patient's checking out, Mr. We'll say Joe Smith had SRP today, or perio maintenance, excuse me. We need prior SRP dates. Can we get the information from the prior office he or she was seen at? Just having that cohesiveness is really going to help. I know sometimes it seems easier to task it to one person, but as long as you're communicating and the patient's also hearing it, it's a little bit of overhear psychology. That way, if your perio maintenance comes back denied, the patient's already heard, we need that SRP date to get the perio maintenance paid. So it's going to make it easier to have those conversations with the patient. And then it's also going to task each and every team member to be accountable. So I know easier said than done. It's definitely a practice that takes quite a bit of time to perfect and craft and always be finessing of it. But I hope that's helpful. If not, feel free to send us a message and we can chat more with you about that and maybe some things that might help. All right. Let's see here. And okay, I already answered that one. Apologies. When a practice is working with a company like Wisdom, how do you help make this problem better? That is a great question. So we help improve the issue on multiple levels. Our team's actively flagging and helping correct common issues like missing attachments, incomplete clinical notes, or even incorrect subscriber or patient information, which are often the root cause of those denials or reason that the claims aren't getting out. We also identify patterns, whether in documentation, coding, or submission. We provide proactive feedback, and then we also kind of offer like a training to the office through our touch points. By sharing those insights, ultimately what we're hoping for is to build healthier habits and ultimately improve your claim success rate. So it's a collaboration approach focused on catching what's being missed and also empowering your team with the tools and knowledge to prevent it moving forward. Wow, these are great questions, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, I like this one. As a new biller, how can I best identify when a note is, or excuse me, when a note is missing key components, especially if I'm not been clinical myself? Yeah, so that's a great question, and definitely everyone has a starting point. For me, thinking back to when I was a new biller, I really wish I had resources like what Wisdom provides. It's really invaluable because insurance is always changing the name of the game. What I would probably suggest is following our blogs. We have some amazing resources that will help you identify common claim attachments, which go with which claims and what information is necessary to provide, like prior placement of a crown when you're redoing it. Making those chart notes, like your own chart, I should say, or even using our cheat sheets is going to be essential to studying. So, like anything, it takes practice and getting to learn, but having those handy dandy cheat sheets will not only help you be more easily to identify when things are missing, but it'll eventually become second nature. So also learning and understanding how everything affects everything you do, back to that quote from earlier, it's going to help keep your team cohesive.
And we have lots of cheat sheets on our website for like clinical notes, but also just like dental billing 101. So we can also send that to you guys as well because we've gotten a lot of great feedback. And again, we're all about making your life easier. So we're here to help.
I really wish I had those when I was first starting out. This would have been so much more helpful. All right. And then we have a few questions about adding soap notes, documentation. How can we make it easier? I'm going to loop these all together, which basically the gist of it is, do you have any tips or tools to help our front desk assistants and doctors all align on the soap format? That is an amazing question because, again, teamwork makes the dream work, but it is definitely something that you have to practice. So short answer is yes. I would say print out a copy of our soap note templates, and Abby said we'll be providing that recap after today's webinar. Have a team meeting on the importance of it, and then implement it by having a copy in each operatory or workstation. I'm a huge fan of that. Each member should know exactly what section they're responsible for filling out, and the best way to have good soap notes is to prep before the appointment. So just like you do with your health history reviews, you're going to look at the last chart notes, you're going to document any current changes on that new soap note that you're going to be implementing. And then at the end of the day, make sure to review your route slips or just take a look through your appointments and make sure you've got all those key pieces of information. A lot of softwares even have the option to pre-format the chart note itself. So you can set up those templates. In this case, if it's easier, you can even have the descriptor or the acronym. So the S, the O, A, and the P. That way it eliminates the guesswork on who's to fill out which section or what goes where. And then eventually, as you get in the routine of it, it's just going to become second nature. So
Yeah, I think it's the combination of making a habit out of it. And I feel like all the psychologists say that a habit takes 21 days to become a habit. So start now, and by the end of the summer and before then, you'll be a master at soap notes. And yeah, I think just reiterating the fact that everything is teamwork and like not one person is responsible for everything. And you can't really submit great notes without everyone together. So teamwork.
yeah. And then let's see, Kim had a question. Do you add soap notes as an attachment or its own documentation for supporting? Yeah, I would say add it as an attachment. A lot of times it's easier to just snap the whole clinical note right there and add it versus have to copy and paste. Some softwares don't let you do that, so then you have to retype it. And you only have so many characters in the remarks box. So attachment's best. That way they can see it is an actual product of what you've been able to provide, and it's like the real deal versus a narrated version. So again, you want to show that story. You don't want to give them the summary because you're being graded on your essay, right? So I'll answer that one. Looks like we got to that one as well. Is soap always the best method for all procedures, or is there exceptions where another format works better? Yeah, I would say soap is kind of the gold standard. I think of it like washing my hands. I'm always going to use soap. From new in dentistry, I'm always going to use soap. I know that seems like a silly analogy, but that's just how I remember it. It's like I need to document everything. So again, it's the gold standard, and it's because it provides a clear, structured way to communicate patient care. So especially when it comes to supporting your dental necessity for those claims, that's your go-to. That said, while soap is incredibly effective for most dental procedures, there are probably a few exceptions with limited scope visits like suture removals, maybe your basic re-cements, things that may not require the same level of detail and can slide through as more abbreviated format, but just make sure that the essential information is still there, clearly documented. It's less about whether soap is the only option and more about whether your documentation is telling the full clinical story or supporting the treatment rendered, also defending the necessity of care.
This might be a silly question, but do you have a favorite letter of soap, or like what's the most important one in your opinion?
Yeah, I'm going to say the O and the P are my favorite. So documenting what's observed, aka the diagnosis, and what action was taken or the plan. Both of these are probably crucial to creating that story to insurance. So telling the moral of the story and what the outcome was. Again, you don't want to give the abbreviated version. When people read books, they want to read it start to finish, excuse me.
Well, I don't know.
Front to back.
Front to back. Though sometimes I like to read the last page of a book first, but don't do
That
that.
is true. But you
Don't,
don't always get the full story. So
you
it's like,
don't get the full story. But you do, like, if you were to only choose two letters, is that a thing you can do, or is it better? You probably need all the letters, right? Like of the O and the A and the P, you need everything, or is like, could I just do the subjective?
yeah, I would say worst case scenario, just practice soap all the time. So doesn't have to be a long abbreviated process. Again, with the re-cements or the suture removals, like I talked about, you could just keep that simple, but just make sure it's there. I like to say build healthy habits. And so if you stop doing it, you're going to quickly get out of the habit of doing it, which is not what we're here for today.
Right. So I guess better safe than sorry. Include everything you possibly can. And yeah, the whole acronym is there for a reason.
Exactly.
Okay. Just making sure.
Perfect. All right. Are insurance companies really looking at the notes that closely? Yes, they definitely are. So, especially when a claim doesn't pass through auto adjudication, which basically means that services such as cleanings, x-rays, things of that nature, they process automatically without much review. But once a claim is flagged for adjudication, it's basically pulled out of that fast lane and manually reviewed. So usually that's because there's additional documentation that's needed to justify the procedure. So this is where your clinical notes are going to become critical. So again, the soap notes, make sure they're filled out entirety. They're often the main source of information used during utilization review, which is going to determine whether the treatment was necessary or not to be covered. So if the notes are missing key details or they weren't submitted at all, the claim can be delayed or denied, which is not what we want. And here's the kicker. So every resubmission can delay your payment by up to 5 business days or more. We already know insurance takes a long time, so we are here to reduce the time that those claims are getting paid. So yes, they are looking at those closely, especially when the claim doesn't tell the full story up front. So make sure that they have no reason to kick it back to you.
I really like this question that came in. So Kendra, what are your thoughts on using abbreviations in clinical notes? Is that kosher or should be avoided? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I guess I would need more context to that. I would say, like, if you're saying something like updated HX for health history, that's fine. But when it comes time to relaying what the patient was experiencing, what the diagnosis is, I would say if it's standard and what you learned in dental school or even working in the field, like Crown, CRN, that's fine. But other key and objective things that insurance is going to need to know, make sure that it's clearly documented to where everybody understands it. If it's kind of non-standard and it's more like a lingo or an abbreviation that only your office uses.
It looks like she put a clarification here. Yeah, you see Jen.
Oh yeah. I'm going to say that one's probably safe.
And for those who can't see, she wrote, they wrote Gen Calc as general calculus. Is that legit? And the verdict is yes.
But if you put GC, I would probably say no. Because
Yeah. I feel like that's always the conclusion is if you're questioning it, if you're unsure, it's better to be more thorough than not. Because again, once you send it out and it might get bounced back, you don't want to have to deal with resubmitting that because it's just going to delay everything much more. So even though it probably takes like another 30 seconds to type out that whole thing, depending on how fast of a typer you are, like it'll be worth it in the long run, you know, for your future self, just write it all out if you're unsure.
looks like we have awful payment reimbursement for SRPs, and I can't understand why. Notes are detailed. That's a great question. That could be like a credentialing issue. That could also be your contract rate with insurance. There might be a bit more going on there than I can answer today, but if you wanted to connect, Samantha, feel free to send us an email. And then if you're able to provide some examples of what you're seeing, we can definitely help you with that a little bit more probably than we can today. So
Yeah, so feel free to use the email up here, the info@withwisdom.com, and one of us or like a real person will get back to you, I promise. We're a small team, but we are very dedicated to everyone who has questions or help, and we're happy to schedule time on the phone as well. So if you have any specific questions, we're here to help.
all right. And then it looks like last question. I don't see any more coming in. Is getting paid for onlays is a problem? Can you please give me an idea of the wording I need to use? Definitely make sure that your SOAP notes are there. So think about what the objective is, or excuse me, the subjective, objective, the assessment and the plan. So why you're doing the onlays in the first place, make sure you're including all those critical details. Is it because there's not enough supporting to structure for a crown? Is there another reason that you're doing it? Usually that one too is going to be easier to diagnose what's happening if we're able to kind of see a glimpse into what current chart notes look like. So I would say also reach out if that's a big problem for you, and we can help triage that and hopefully get you on the right track moving forward. Getting iTero scans paid for by insurance. That one is probably going to be more insurance specific as well. I would probably like to follow up with you, Samantha, in a separate email to that, if that's okay.
So again, feel free to reach out to us at info@withwisdom.com, and we can help answer those more detailed or specific insurance questions. Cool. We'll leave it open for a couple more minutes if people have any additional questions, but it seems like everyone who had a question got it answered, which is great. But if you think of anything that we didn't answer today, again, feel free to reach out. And we've got some really good examples of like great SOAP notes in our ebook up here. So again, please scan if you would like it, and we'll also send it in a follow-up email tomorrow. But yeah, I think if that's all, if no one has any more questions, we can let you go a bit early. But thank you all so much for spending the morning, afternoon, evening with us, wherever you're located. Yeah, we hope you found this helpful.
Yeah, don't forget to download those templates and then reach out with questions.
Yeah, we're here to support you however you need. Cool. Well, thank you all so much. We're gonna end the webinar if I can figure out how to.
Happy Wednesday, everybody.
Happy Wednesday. I don't know how to end this. Okay. All right. Goodbye.